Hello replay viewers, hello viewers from mathwithmatthew.com, and hello to those of you who are joining us now for this scope on the keys to being a successful, in parentheses, math teacher. Now, I am a math teacher, math administrator myself, so I'm going to focus this talk on the lens of mathematics. But for the majority of this talk, it's going to be encompassing all teaching in general. So if you are a current teacher, if you are a prospective teacher, this is something for you to understand based upon my experience and my research, what the keys are to be a successful teacher. Now, before I go through and share this with you, let me give you a little bit of background information about myself. I was a middle school math teacher for 13 years. I'm currently a math administrator for a K through 12 district. I'm also an adjunct professor of math at UMass Lowell, and I teach in the Graduate School of Education at Fitchburg State University. Thank you, those of you that are joining the scope. I appreciate you coming to listen a little bit, to hear about what are the keys to being a successful teacher. So, through my experience as a teacher, as an administrator, and as those who train teachers in both mathematics and in general education, I have found that there are 4 keys to be a successful teacher. And I want to talk about each of those 4 keys here with you today. The first has to do with your content knowledge. The second has to do with your pedagogical knowledge. The third has to do with your relationships. And the fourth has to do with assessments. So let's begin. Let's talk first about your content knowledge. For whatever you teach, mathematics or any other subject, you need to know your content, and you need to know it very well, both for the level in which you're teaching and beyond. If you are a 7th grade teacher, it's not just enough that you need to know Algebra 1. You need to know Algebra 1, you need to know Algebra 2, you need to know some geometry. For many of our teachers, especially at the lower grade levels, they are only comfortable knowing the material up into the level that they teach. But you need to know where the content, where your subject area is going to go based upon when the kids graduate from your classroom. So you have to know your content beyond the current grade level. Also, it's important for you to know a little bit about how the content is applied to the real world. Within mathematics, a lot of it can be applied to the real world, practical in nature. Sometimes it's not always applied to the real world, but you need to communicate this with students so they can see when it's used and how it's used within the real world. Thank you, those of you that are just joining the scope. We are talking about what are the key attributes to be a successful teacher with a focus on mathematics. And the last thing about the content, and this is important, is that you know a little bit about the history and the development of the content. One of the best classes you could take is the history of math if you're a math teacher. So you can learn about how concepts such as pi or irrational numbers or Pythagorean theorem or calculus has been developed over time. So first of all, make sure you know your content. The second is pedagogy. Okay, I believe it's very important that teachers teach for understanding. Procedural fluency is important. That's just knowing your math facts. But it's also very important that we understand why the formula works. Why is the area of a circle pi times radius squared? That is very important to know as well. Teaching for understanding also means it's more likely that you're going to have long-term retention of the skills, not just memorize it for 1 week to be able to be successful on a test and then forget it completely. So when you teach your subject, you need to teach for understanding. And you have to be able to know as a teacher multiple ways how to present a problem. Okay? Don't just teach it the way you learned it. Kids learn many different ways and people have different learning styles. So you need to have those different learning styles be accommodated so you'll be able to teach any sort of a concept at least 2 or 3 different ways. And also we want to encourage our students to be able to solve the problems their own creative ways. We can't just force them, or we should not just force them that, hey, I know how to solve this problem, do it my way, and that's it. Let them come up with their own creative ways. That is how you build conceptual understanding. And one other thing, and I've talked about this on a previous scope, has to do with lesson planning. So let me just talk about the 3 keys to a lesson plan and development, and that has to do with having objectives or goals for the lesson, having formative assessments throughout the lesson, and having a summary phase of the lesson, the last 5 or 7 minutes. And I have a different talk specifically on that I would encourage you to watch. And the final thing with the pedagogy is having authentic experiences for the students. Students learn a variety of different ways. The way they learn at home with technology is something that we rarely or we struggle having in the classroom. So make the experiences that you present to them authentic so that it is a positive learning experience. Okay, so we've talked about the math content or your content knowledge, your pedagogical knowledge. Let's talk about relationships. If you are going to be a successful teacher, you need to have relationships with the students in your classroom. You have to be able to have those relationships not only with the students, but with their parents. Having these relationships that you build in the beginning of the year is very essential. Having a strong student-teacher, student-parent relationship is one way where you can be very successful as a teacher. In addition, you should be building relationships with all stakeholders, with administrators, with secretaries, with custodians, with your other teachers. Building relationships within a school is very important, and it can really help promote collaboration. And if you are a new or prospective teacher, it can really help get the support that you need in the beginning of your educational career. And the last thing has to do with assessments. You need to know how to assess your kids throughout a lesson in a quick and meaningful manner. Now, I'm not referring to giving long tests that are a period in length or quizzes. I'm talking about throughout a lesson, be able to figure out, hey, which kids get it? How's the entire class doing? Where you do these quick checks, thumbs up, sideways, thumbs down, 1 to 5 scale. How much do we understand it, kids? Or quick questions where you check in with the whole class to see if they are going through the learning process that you anticipated. So we have to have these assessments. And it's nice if you and other teachers who teach the same subject at the same grade level have common assessments as well. So you can compare how your students are doing compared to how your colleague students are doing and have those professional conversations and data meetings about the data that you can gather in your classroom on these assessments. And I think it's very important that these conversations and meetings, these data meetings occur outside of the classroom during your planning time, so you're not planning and preparing your lessons and looking at assessments by yourself. It should be done in a collaborative manner. So, if you're a current math teacher or you're thinking about becoming a math teacher, it's nice for you to know about your content, the pedagogy, how to build relationships, and also how to assess your students in a meaningful way. There's a lot more to teaching just that. But if you're a new teacher or prospective teacher, try focusing on those 4 things. Thanks for listening to The Scope.